Good morning, everyone, and welcome into this day with Quimper Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. Whoever you are, wherever you're from, whomever you love, and whatever your faith tradition, you are welcome here. My name is Sigrid Cummings, and I'm a member here at QUUF. I'd like to begin this service by acknowledging that the water, land, and shorelines here in Port Townsend are the traditional territories of the S'Klallam and Chimacum peoples. We honor and acknowledge our Indigenous members and neighbors and vow to help restore and sustain their homeland. As we begin our time together, let us settle our minds and calm our hearts with the ringing of our chime. It is good to be together. I'd like to welcome the Quimper Quartet now, who will lead us in our call to community, hymn number 1024, When the Spirit Says Do.
You've got to do when the Spirit says do. You've got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you've got to do, oh Lord, you've got to do when the Spirit says do. Spirit says do, 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 Spirit says do. You've got to sing when the Spirit says sing. You've got to sing when the Spirit says sing. When the Spirit says sing, you've got to sing, oh Lord. You've got to sing when the Spirit says sing. Spirit says sing, 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 Spirit says sing. You've got to dance when the Spirit says dance. You've got to dance when the Spirit says dance. When the Spirit says dance, you've got to dance, oh Lord. You've got to dance when the Spirit says dance. 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 You've got to laugh when the Spirit says laugh. You've got to laugh when the Spirit says laugh. When the Spirit says laugh, you've got to laugh, oh Lord. You've got to laugh when the Spirit says laugh. Spirit says laugh. Spirit says laugh. Spirit says laugh. Spirit says laugh, Spirit says laugh, Spirit says laugh. You've got to shout when the Spirit says shout. You've got to shout when the Spirit says shout. When the Spirit says shout, you've got to shout, oh Lord. You've got to shout when the Spirit says shout. Spirit says shout. Spirit says shout, Spirit says shout, Spirit says shout, Spirit says shout, Spirit says shout. You've got to do when the Spirit says do. You've got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you've got to do, oh Lord. You've got to do when the Spirit says do. Spirit says do, 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 Spirit says do. Spirit says do.
Thank you, Pat, Kristin, Al, Doug, and Sheila. Please join us now in our chalice lighting words. We light this chalice to remind ourselves of our commitment to seek peace as justice makers. We also share this light with our community as we move into the work of love and light. Thank you. Our opening words are by A.C. Grayling. Socrates famously said that the unconsidered life is not worth living. He meant that a life lived without forethought or principle is a life so vulnerable to chance and so dependent on the choices and actions of others that it is of little real value to the person living it. He further meant that a life well lived is one which has goals and integrity, which is chosen and directed by the one who lives it to the fullest extent possible to a human agent caught in the webs of society and history. And now for our announcements. We have 2 announcements this morning. The first announcement is from the Program Council and the Healthy Community Team. Community meetings were held on August 1st and 9th to present information and hear comments and questions in the pros and cons of offering 2 classes proposed for the ALPS fall semester. An email was sent last week to all QUUF members. It includes links to a survey asking whether each of the 2 classes should be offered, to recordings of both community meetings for those who wish to review them, and to questions and written replies from the involved teams on the same topics. The survey deadline is August 21st at 4 p.m., which for most viewers is this afternoon. For more information, please see the most recent weekly update. Our second announcement is from the nominating committee. We have a vacancy on the nominating committee and one on the Board of Trustees. If you or someone you know would like to serve QUUF in one of these leadership positions and feel that you or they have the skills, please fill out the nominating committee application found on the QUUF website under About QUUF. Page down to Teams and Committees on the left and click on Nominating or send us their name. These vacant positions will be for 1 year, at which time the positions will be up for election by the voting members of QUUF. The elected persons will fill the remaining terms of those positions. The nominating committee is taking names and applications at this time. Applications must be sent to the nominating committee by September 9th of this year. Please send your applications, name suggestions, or questions to nominations@quuuf.org before September 9th. Thank you for considering the possibility of serving the members of QUUF in either of these capacities. And now, we acknowledge and welcome those of you who are visiting us this morning. If you are online with us, you are invited to say hello in the comments section and tell us your name and where you're from. The chat section can be found below or on the right side of the video when it is out of full screen. If you are attending in person, introduce yourself to your neighbors after the service. Either way, we'd love to hear from you. So welcome, everyone. We're glad you're with us today. We will now receive the offering, which today goes to support our programming, staff, and building here at QUUF. If you'd like to donate today, you have 3 options. Text the amount you'd like to give to the number now showing at the bottom of the screen. Give to our website, quuuf.org, and click on the giving link, or simply mail a check to QUUF. Just remember to put offering in the memo line. We will now gratefully receive your offering as we listen to Pat Rodgers play Limbo by Einaudi. Thank you, Pat. We will now share our joys and sorrows, recognizing that our personal joys and sorrows are only a fragment of the joys and sorrows of the larger community of life. And thus, we place this first stone thinking in particular of those in our country who are working for a healthy democratic process. We also give thanks to the folks in Port Townsend who stood up for the trans community in this city. And now, within the congregation, Catherine Ottaway shares a joy that her daughter is getting her master's with distinction. The topic is equity in teaching a middle school computer class. Best wishes to her and to all of her students. We place a second stone, rejoicing as Carl and Linda Bach celebrate their 31st wedding anniversary this past Thursday, August 18th. Best wishes to both of you, and may you have many more. And we now place a final stone, holding in our hearts the joys and sorrows I've just shared, but also thinking of such joys and sorrows among us that are unexpressed, but of no less importance. I invite you now into a moment of silence.
Today I want to share a poem by Tanur Ali, a Black woman, poet, speaker at the United Nations, teacher, farmer, and one of my best friends. This piece can be found in the book Awakening the Heart of the Beloved Community. Unplugged. I got unplugged and found myself plugged in, came unhinged and bowed down in submission. I am not the seer of my mission, just a believer in greater powers, believer in a notion that love will keep on growing even if it's planted in concrete ideologies, even if it's never had a guide to send it sifting through reality. Love is my reality, and you are as sparks to my flame, the ignition drenched in heaven-sent capacities to help me know my purpose. I'm worth it. Finally, I'm perfect, eternally, and not in egotistical senses, in extraterrestrial admission that I have seen God, surviving, thriving inside all of us, sending synapses between personas so all our actions are from the same thoughts. We all got caught in this morning's inspiration. It rained. And once we got that trust in things unseen, faith is but a common trust between the walls of all of this. And thus, we must remain unplugged, but plugged into higher missions, unhinged, but bent down in submission, reflecting heavenly capacities all over this thing. What would you call it? What visions have called you to listen, called you to consensus with the rest of us, who know the differences between us are merely heaven's intentions? For our gods know their own purpose. We are but the lessons learned vicariously from his celestial collective of inherent ambitions to evolve. I believe in things unseen because I have been blinded by a cause, deafened by hectic rhetoric, cast down by the lowest of corrosive spirits, and risen again like a phoenix. Found myself in tune with vibrations, seeing glory between silver linings, and remembered, I am not alone here. You too are on this path, and we are innumerable. We are just so in tune, you know? If it seems like we've been guided, it's only because we have. If it seems like I'm too hype, it's only because I am. This is not the ebb, it's the flow. This is but the time to let go. Curvy currents tend to carry current limits off with ocean, mystics and ultraviolet visions of little sparks in dark places. You just need a little heart to start ignition, a little spark to start the engine. You've got to travel kind of far outside your comfort zone to find where you belong. And when you get there, I'll be waiting, making available to you the space to come unplugged and find your mission. Come unhinged and fling progression like the opened gates of heaven. This is just our beginning.
All love comes back to you. It's all given and taken. Don't ever be a fool, no. And try to mend the heart you're breaking. One day you do find just what you left behind. Then ring a bell and make the spotlight clear. You see magic will appear. Give me love, give me love, and I'll bring it back to you. Give me love, give me love, and I'll bring it is but a thought when a heart is not behind it. And love can't be sold nor bought, but if you get you must repay it. If one day you do find just what you left behind, then ring a bell and make the spotlight clear. You see magic will appear. Give me love, give me love, and I'll bring it back to you. Give me love, give me love, and I'll bring it back to you. Do, do. Your mind, it might be past or present, but since time we can't rewind, you better stop and take its lesson. If one day you do find just what you left behind, ring a bell and make the spotlight clear. You see magic will appear. Give me love, give me love, and I'll bring it back to you. Give me love, give me love, and I'll bring it back to you. Give me love, give me love, and I'll bring it back to you. Oh, give me love, you gotta give us love, and I'll bring it back to you. Oh, give me love, I'll bring it back to you.
Roseanna Almaee is a new member at QUUF, having joined this past spring. She is a retired educator and fully involved volunteer here at QUUF and in Port Townsend in several areas. Welcome, Roseanne.
Viktor Frankl said, "Life is not primarily a quest for pleasure, as Freud believed, or a quest for power, as Adler believed, but a quest for meaning." We have all heard that life is short. Some of us know it very early in life, like when the children of Vivaldi, we are faced with the loss of a friend or family member. But most of us are fortunate to realize that life is short only when we reach that certain age, when we are short on years. After understanding that life is short, the next question we are faced with is how to make life matter. And this is a question we have been asking since the beginning of time. What is the meaning to our lives? What is important? And how do we do something that matters? "Life is too short not to do something that matters" is a quote I first read from Hugh MacLeod in the mid to late 1990s, when he was just in the process of funding his now famous gaping void idea. I actually first saw this quote connected to a piece of his amazing and quirky art, and later became the owner of a signed numbered piece of this work, which is on my wall today. And for anyone who gets an email from me, you will see that it is a tagline of my signature. And anyone who has ever visited the original site of Fen River Farm in Chimacum might see this quote carved into wood with my name under it. This was a misunderstanding about credit of the quote, but the sentiment is the same. Life is short, so what are we doing that matters? It is easy to choose things or people that matter. What matters to a child? Being with friends, family, having fun, and frequently being kind and helping others. What matters to us on a daily basis? Cooking, cleaning, being with family and friends, etc. To Greta Thunberg, the 15-year-old who risked her life and future to bring the story of climate change to everyone who would listen, the planet we live on matters, especially for those like her who will live into the next several decades. To 15-year-old Malala Yousafzai, a young girl in Pakistan who wanted to go to school, education mattered enough to risk dying, and she almost did. But because she risked her life, she brought the plight of young women to the eyes of the world. For her, equality mattered. I was fortunate to spend a brief time working with Stephen Jenkinson, the grief walker and author of Die Wise and A Generation's Worth. He tells us that we cannot love life unless we also love death. He says that death is the only one born with us, walking by our sides all through life and leaving with us, our constant and loving companion. And what does this say about what matters? Our death companion is the friend who is there to remind us not to luxuriate in our earnings or blessings, but to do something that leaves a legacy. We may not know when we are about to die, but our companion does, and is always there to hold our hands as we leave, and I believe to ask us, so, what did you do that mattered? But how do we decide what matters as we go through our lives? Rumi says, "So this world seems lasting, though 'tis but a sleeper's dream." And Richard Rohr, the Franciscan priest, says in his book, Falling Upward, that life has two halves. The first half is about building the container of our lives, the superficial sleeper's dream. And along those lines, what mattered to me as a young adult like most young adults, was finding a life partner, learning skills for employment, finding my way through parenthood, and trying to raise children who would be self-sufficient, contributing individuals in the world. I was busy building the container. Furthermore, like many others, I also thought what mattered was social currency, earning degrees, collecting awards and recognition. This form of container building may be necessary, but it is definitely superficial. And at the time, it was all that mattered very much to me. According to Father Rohr, we need to fill, not just build the container. He says some of us never get to that second part of life where we fill the container, no matter how old we get. We just continue container building by collecting stuff, adding to our possessions and prizes, and generally having fun because we think we've worked hard and deserve it. He also says that some of us realize very early on, even as children or young adults, that the container, though necessary, is superficial, and it needs to be filled with passion or the meaning of our lives, our legacy. And this leads to the spiritual path that we can take in the next part of our lives. I was very fortunate to have people come into my life who pointed the way and gave me examples of how to find a passion and fill my container. My parents were both singers and artists, though that is not what built their containers. They worked regular jobs, but they sang in the Fort Worth Opera Course for 13 years when I was a preteen and young teen. My parents' friends, Placido Domingo and Beverly Sills, befriended me. Their amazing talent brought beauty to all, but their kindness and their generosity of spirit to a very shy young girl was what influenced me. They showed me that not only talent, but also a good and kind spirit mattered. My parents' art was influential as well. Through my father's painting and bronze work and my mother's weaving and needlework, I met many of their artist friends in our home who showed me another form of passion and what mattered to them. As a shy teenager, I valued the kindness and personal generosity of these artists who were like family. My parents were also activists. My mother was an activist in Fort Worth in the 1960s and 70s, working for women's rights. She and her kind and inclusive women friends showed me that community involvement and political activism mattered. My father once brought a group of Hispanic and Black families out to our land, 45 minutes outside of Fort Worth, to spend the weekend, when there was talk of race riots, which threatened these families living around his business in North Fort Worth. His actions taught me that color or class did not matter when the people you met and talked to and worked with and ate with on a daily basis were threatened by bigots and racists. Because of their examples of activism, I have always been involved in social justice, which led me to a brief time working with Lech Walesa when he was traveling and working in the U.S. These experiences were examples for me of the variety of passion and filling the container. When I think about doing something that matters, I think about these examples of passion in the arts and in activism, but I also connect these to a spiritual path. For me, I've had a long, lifelong spiritual search that took me on a winding journey through several denominations of Christianity, where at one point I thought I would be a missionary, and at another point, to my Southern Baptist grandmother's horror, I thought I would be a nun. Then my path led to the study of comparative religion in college. And then, after marriage, I spent time learning about Islam and Zoroastrian from my in-laws. Then I spent several years in the Baha'i faith. And in the early 2000s, I spent a wonderful time studying with Thich Nhat Hanh, learning his form of liberated and gender-balanced Buddhism and mindfulness. From my Jewish ancestors, I learned about my Jewish roots and recently studied the Sefer Yetzirah. When my parents lived in Mexico, my father made friends with a Oaxacan shaman, and I learned about his sacred art and beliefs. From my daughters, I've learned about Hinduism and Augusta Wall's embodied use of liberation theology. More recently, and from new friends, I've learned about the beliefs of the Northwest Indigenous people. And today, here I am, reveling in the values of Unitarian Universalism. One time, a Methodist minister tried to shame me in front of a study group by saying I was a cafeteria Christian. She meant that I did not follow the Bible as she wanted me to, and I was asking too many questions. She wanted me to be compliant, but her words backfired because I left and never returned. Her wonderful lesson reminded me of the book, What We Say Matters, by Judith and Ike Lassiter, where they say, speech is a power that we can choose to use for fostering connection between and among people. When you create an atmosphere of trust and connection with your words, there is little that cannot get worked out. That Methodist minister was an example of what not to do. When I remember her lesson, I realize that yes, I take all the best pieces from the spiritual buffet provided by all the peoples of the world because all of them lead to the same place. These stories and beliefs from all over the world, as well as the examples provided for me by the people in my life, are what have helped me to do something that matters. And being in community with all of you matters to me. Being able to represent this community at the UUA General Assembly mattered. This building, this wonderful place where we gather, the people who work here or volunteer here matter and have earned my support. So every day I wake up with gratitude for all that I have experienced. I welcome my companion death to another day, and we decide what to do that matters. Sometimes it's writing letters for Vote Forward. Sometimes it's making phone calls or sending notes to friends. Sometimes it means attending protests or meetings online or in person. Sometimes, like these past Sunday mornings, it meant showing up in person at Quimper UU for service with others. Sometimes what matters means sharing what I have with those people and organizations who need help. And sometimes what matters is my family, resting and caring for myself so that I can do more on another day. Life is too short not to do something that matters, and being grateful for all of this is part of the mix. I feel I am called, driven. It has become my passion to do the myriad things that matter, whatever those are, but to do them each day and to be grateful I am here for all the fun. And I close by asking you, what will you do today that matters? Our closing hymn today is number 108, My Life Flows On in Endless Song, performed by the Quimper Quartet.
My life goes on in endless song, above this lamentation. I hear the old prison cell and dungeon vile, our thoughts to them are we. When friends by shame are undefiled, how can I keep from singing?
Before we extinguish our chalice, I want to remind you that Susan Landau will be our guest speaker next Sunday. Her topic, Passionately Pro-Choice, will be a history of abortion in the U.S. and of Susan's 25 years of working in abortion care. I hope you can join us. And now, let us join voices in our chalice extinguishing words. We extinguish our flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, the fire of commitment, or the power of transformation. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Now, let us turn our attention to our wonderfully talented Al Thompson as he plays our postlude, the Adagio from Mozart's Clarinet Concerto in A minor, K622. He is accompanied by pianist Helen Lauritsen.
Thank you.